Namaste. Welcome back, Stellar Stargazers, and a warm cosmic hello to our new listeners. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Heather, and you're tuning into the Stellar Soulcast,
where we decode the cosmos one episode at a time.
In our last episode, we explored Lilith, deep diving into her myth, shadow work, and how embracing her energy helps us reclaim hidden power.
But today, we're switching gears to talk about something that's right at the very front door of your chart, your ascendant, also called your rising sign. This is the mask you wear, your first impression, and the lens through which you step into the world. But as always, before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, follow us at the Stellar Soulcast on all our socials, and open your astro journals because this one is all about first impressions, chart rulers, and uncovering the cosmic lens you see life through.
Alrighty, stargazers, let's start with a refresher on what exactly the Ascendant is. Sophie and I have touched on the Ascendant many times in our past episodes, especially episode 6, where we broke down the big three, your sun, moon, and rising. But because the rising is so central, we want to take a moment to really review it before we dive deeper into its history, its chart ruler, and all the juicy layers that come with it. Think of this episode as Ascendant 101. First off, we want to start with some very important pointers. Let's kick off with a quick definition. The ascendant or rising sign is the zodiac sign that was rising on the eastern horizon at the exact moment of your birth. Second, it is imperative to understand why timing and location matter when calculating your ascendant. This is because the rising sign shifts roughly every 2 hours, so having your precise birth time is crucial. But just as important is knowing your exact location of birth, because the coordinates determine the degree of your ascendant. A shift in either time or place can completely change your rising sign, and even a few degrees can alter how your chart is structured. Here's a mini example. Imagine you were born in New York City at 5:57 a.m., and your ascendant was Virgo at 28 degrees. If you were born just 3 minutes later at 6 o'clock a.m., that rising could shift into Libra at 0 degrees. That tiny change flips not just your rising sign, but also the chart ruler and how the rest of your houses line up. Because, don't forget, your rising sign kicks off your birth chart with that very first house. We also want to clarify the rising's distinction from both the sun and the moon. Your sun is the core essence, your I am. Your moon is your emotional world, the I feel. And your rising is your outward vibe and first impression, the I appear. Here's a little analogy to pull this all together. Quickly think of your chart as a theatrical play. The sun is the script, or your storyline. The moon is the soundtrack, your emotional score. And the rising is your costume and stage entrance. It's the way you first step onto that stage and greet that audience. So, stargazers, the takeaway to remember as we go forward is the ascendant is your chart's front door. It sets the tone for your cosmic mansion, and that's why exact birth time, exact location, and even the degree is so important when reading your chart.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Heather.
Hey.
All right, stargazers, let's time travel for a bit because the ascendant has such a fascinating history. Although today we talk about it as your vibe or first impression, the rising has been considered one of the most important parts of a chart since astrology's earliest days. Let's first start with its Babylonian roots. You may remember from episode 10 that the Babylonians used astrology to predict omens and advise their kings. This was done in Mesopotamia by the Babylonian priests called Chaldeans. The Chaldeans meticulously observed and recorded the celestial bodies on the eastern horizon of their predictions. This is known as the observation of heliacal rising, where they observed the celestial bodies rising at dawn in the eastern horizon, shifted every couple of hours And they use that as an anchor point for dividing the sky into 3 divisions based on their 3 most important gods, Anu, Anil, and A. However, around the 4th century BCE, there is historical evidence that Babylonian astrologers began giving individual predictions based on celestial bodies on the eastern horizon. This will later be adopted and expanded on the Greeks, which we'll get into later. Your takeaways here is that the Babylonians' astrological practices laid the foundation for horoscopic astrology, where the celestial bodies in the eastern horizon became the initial starting point, the beginning. Let's now travel over to ancient Egypt and review the significance of the rising signs in their society. Like the Babylonians, the rising sign was not focused on the individual, but rather used for societal predictions. The Egyptians contributed through their system of decans, 10-degree star markers that divided the sky into smaller sections. They were determined by the star groups through the observation of heliacal risings. Each decan was associated with a specific divinity or god, which influenced societal affairs and became key for timing rituals, healings, and incarnational cycles. Many tombs and ceilings were decorated with star maps, reinforcing the rising role in identity and destiny. Now it's time to observe ancient Greek astrology, or in other words, the Hellenistic era. By the time astrology reached Greece, the rising signs were deeply woven into philosophy through the observation of heliacal rising by the Babylonians and Egyptians. However, unlike the Babylonians and Egyptians, the Greeks took the concept of the rising signs and made it personal with the concepts of horoscopus. The word horoscopus literally means watcher of the hour, pointing to the ascendant. Greek astrologers tied the rising to fate and beginnings. It was considered the dawn point of life, or the way the soul emerges into the world. They believed that the ascendant determined not just the physical self, but the tone of a person's entire destiny, and became the starting point of a person's birth chart. Starting to see the development here, stargazers. I hope so. Right? Sounds familiar, right? Because we kind of talked about this just a little bit. But this was the birth of Hellenistic astrology and the foundation of what is practiced today in modern Western astrology.
Hey, I love the foundation, Sophie.
Yes, laying it down brick by brick.
I love it. Thank you for the history lesson on the predecessors of the civilizations I'm going to now dive into.
Yes.
Hey. So, stargazers, let's move forward in time because the story of the rising doesn't stop where Sophie just explained. Rome and the medieval astrologers took what came before and further shaped it into what we use today. Let's begin with ancient Rome and discuss how astrology played a crucial role. From their politics to everyday charts, the Romans significantly popularized the use of the ascendant in natal readings, both for ordinary citizens and for political leaders. It functioned as the key to understanding the divine will and fate. It predicted such things as one's lifespan and life experiences, financial fortunes, and spiritual conditions. In other words, you can think of it as their life's instructional manual. It also played a critical role in their politics. With the rising always at the starting point, the emperors would have their chart read and cast to the people to legitimize their rule and assert their authority. Although the Romans took much of their practice from astrology and the significance of the rising sign from the Greeks, Rome's vast conquests were instrumental in spreading the practice of Hellenistic astrology. As their empire expanded, their astrological and political beliefs were assimilated into the territories they conquered. In other words, you can think of them as a successful influencer of their time, but in a not-so-fun way. Anyway, let's travel along to the medieval era and touch on Renaissance astrology, because this is where things got really technical, and honestly, where math became the beating heart of astrology. During the medieval period, astrologers began refining the way they divided the sky into houses. Systems like whole sign and equal house were already in use, but new mathematical approaches were developed. But as we moved into the late medieval and early Renaissance eras, there was a growing fascination with more mathematically complex quadrant house systems. These systems divided space using geometry and calculation rather than just sign boundaries. Popular examples from this time include the Porphyry system and the Algebraicus system, both of which paved the way for later refinements. The ascendant was at the center of all this calculation. It wasn't just a sign on the horizon. It determined which house system could be applied and how the entire chart would be structured. Without precise math, the whole chart would be skewed. And here's where it gets fascinating. Rising degrees became so crucial that hooray astrologers, the ones casting charts for specific questions, would literally refuse to read a chart if the ascendant was too early or too late in a degree. To them, it meant the timing of the question wasn't right, or that the person asking the question wasn't ready to hear the answer. The mathematics behind these calculations was intense for the time, as it required geometry, astronomy, and deep understanding of planetary motion. Astrology wasn't separate from science. It was science. Calculating an ascendant degree by hand was essentially an act of cosmic mathematics. And it shows just how serious that rising sign was taken. Now let's fast forward to modern times. Today, the rising sign has evolved into what many call your personal brand, or your cosmic vibe. It's the energy people meet before they know your sun or moon. It's the aura that sets the tone of how you show up. While ancient astrologers saw it as fate and incarnation, modern astrologers saw it as your energetic first impression. However, it is crucial to emphasize that the ascendant is just as important as it was practiced by the Greeks. It's still the key that unlocks that whole chart. Before we wrap up, here's a little fun did you know, stargazers. In the start of Hellenistic astrology, the very degree of your ascendant was believed to mark the exact point where your life force entered your body, kind of like the cosmic spark of breath at birth. Ancient astrologers sometimes treated that single degree as sacred, almost like your soul's doorway into the world. How beautiful is that? But anyway, I'm going to pass the attention back to Sophie, who's going to go over how the ascendant is the key to unlocking your whole chart.
Wow, thanks, Heather. That's actually really beautiful to imagine, and thank you.
Welcome.
But all right, stargazers, now that we've traveled through history, let's bring it back to the here and now, because your rising sign has just as much importance today as it did in ancient times. So let's talk about how it shows up in your chart in your life. First things first, it's your first impressions. Your rising sign is your cosmic handshake. It's the vibe people feel when they first meet you. It's the energy that walks into the room before you even say a word. Some astrologers call it the mask you wear, but we like to think of it less as a disguise and more like your front door. It's how people are welcomed into your world. Are you giving bold, fiery energy at the door, or a calm, grounding presence? That's your rising sign talking. Secondly, it's your appearance and body language. The rising also rules your physicality and how you carry yourself. It can influence your facial features, your posture, even your sense of personal style. For example, Leo risings often have a confident, sunny aura that draws attention, while Virgo risings might come across neat, polished, and detail-oriented as they present themselves that way most often. And it's not about fashion alone, but it's the whole energy of your body language. Now, thirdly, it's your energy, style, and aura. So think of the rising as your default vibe and how you approach the world instinctively. It's the spark people feel from you in those first 30 seconds. Air risings might come across talkative and curious. Water risings, empathic and magnetic. Earth risings, steady, reliable. And we love them for that. And fire risings, bold and dynamic. Even before someone gets to know your sun and your moon, they're definitely feeling your rising energy. Now, fourthly, it's your house system anchor. Here's where it gets even juicier, stargazers. Your rising sign doesn't just set the tone for how people see you. It's literally setting the stage for your entire birth chart, okay? Because it's the beginning. Now, the degree of your rising is the start of your first house. And from there, the rest of your houses unfold. It's literally your destiny. But that means that your rising determines where your planets live and how all your life areas are arranged. So without the ascendant, your chart would just be a list of planets floating in space. It's the rising that roots everything into place and gives you that process. And lastly, it's your identity development. Your rising speaks to how you enter life's experiences. The sun shows who you are at your core. The moon shows what you need emotionally, and the rising sign shows how you step into situations. It is how you begin anything new. From conversations to careers to relationships, it's the lens through which you experience the world. And often it's the energy you grow more comfortable embodying as you get older. Many people say that they grow into their rising sign as life goes on. Before we end this segment, there's something fun to reflect on, stargazers. Think about the first thing people usually say about you. Is it that you're bold, quiet, magnetic, nurturing? Now, compare that to your rising sign. Does it match, or does your rising seem to give off a different vibe than what you feel? And don't forget, your rising doesn't work alone. Aspects it makes to other planets can really shape how it shows up. Jot this down into your astro journals because noticing that alignment or that gap can be so eye-opening. So when we say the rising is important, we really mean it. It's not just about first impressions or surface level vibes. It's the anchor of your chart, the aura you project, and the way your soul makes its entrance into the world. The biggest takeaway from this segment is to remember that it's your starting point and it shapes everything that follows. So Heather, you ready to talk about the rising sign and how it determines the chart ruler?
Absolutely, Sophie. All right, stargazers. This is one of the most fascinating determinants of your rising sign. It's important to know that your rising sign doesn't just shape your vibe, but it actually chooses the boss of your chart. That boss is what we call your chart ruler. For those a little newer to astrology, or if you're tuning in for the first time, you might be thinking, what the heck is a chart ruler? Your chart ruler is a planet that rules a sign sitting on your ascendant, and this is a big deal. We often mention that the sun is the CEO of your chart. Well, think of the chart ruler as the executive board of your chart. It is the planet that sets the tone and pulls the strings behind the scenes. It has special weight in your natal chart because it describes how you move through the world and where your rising energy wants to go. This is how it works. Let's say you're an Aries rising. Aries is ruled by Mars. So Mars becomes your chart ruler. That means Mars's placement by sign and house in your chart will tell you a lot about how you actually direct that Aries rising vibe energy. For example, if Mars is in the 10th house, career and ambition will be your front-facing energy. If it's in the 4th house, home and family life might feel like the core compass. And the sign your Mars sits in plays a significant role. For example, if your Mars is in Pisces, that energy might come out more intuitive or perhaps spiritual. We reviewed this in a past episode, but I'm going to re-review each rising sign and its chart ruler. Also, check out our socials at the Stellar Soulcast because we have a chart ruler visual guide for you to save and reference back to at any time. Alright, so here we go. If you're an Aries rising, your chart ruler is Mars. Taurus rising, your chart ruler is Venus. Gemini rising, your chart ruler is Mercury. Cancer rising, your chart ruler is the Moon. Leo rising, your chart ruler is the Sun. Virgo rising, your chart ruler is Mercury. Libra rising, your chart ruler is Venus. Scorpio rising, your chart ruler is Mars and Pluto. Sagittarius rising, your chart ruler is Jupiter. Capricorn rising, your chart ruler is Saturn. Aquarius rising, your chart ruler is Saturn and Uranus. And lastly, if you're a Pisces rising, your chart ruler is Jupiter and Neptune. You may have noticed that Scorpio, Aquarius, and Pisces have two chart rulers. This is because before the discovery of the outer planets, only the personal and social planets were assigned to each zodiac. But modern astrologers began associating the outer planets with having a significant effect on these three signs. But moving along, remember, it's not just which planet rules your chart, but it's also where it lives. Its sign shows the style of your expression, and its house shows the area of life where your rising energy wants to shine the brightest. That's why two people with the same rising sign can feel so different, because their chart ruler is placed differently. Also, quick tip, don't forget, aspects play a role too. But before we end this segment, we want you to take note of your rising sign. Find its ruling planet, and then trace where that planet lives in your chart. Which house, which sign, what aspects is it making? Write it all down in your astro journal. Because once you see your chart ruler clearly, it's like unlocking your GPS, because it shows you where your rising energy is steering the whole ship of your chart. Well, with that, Sophie, you ready to talk about the Ascendant in relation to the elements?
Yep. So let's zoom out and look at rising signs by their elements, because while each rising sign has its own unique vibe, the element gives us the flavor of that vibe. It's like the overarching theme of your first impression. So let's break it down by fire, earth, air, and water. First off, let's observe our fire risings, which are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. These risings are bold, energetic, and hard to miss. They radiate vitality the moment they enter a room. Fire risings often have an aura of enthusiasm, and they look like they're ready to leap into life at any second. Their first impressions are categorized as confident, adventurous, and maybe even a little larger than life energy. For fire risings, think of someone who instantly lights up the space with laughter or strong presence. That's classic fire rising energy. Now let's move along to our earth risings, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Earth risings are grounded, calm, and composed, bringing a sense of stability to their surroundings. They often carry themselves with reliability and poise, like the friend you trust to have everything under control. Their first impressions are often practical, steady, or maybe a touch reserved at first, but they're always dependable. For earth risings, they are a person who looks polished, organized, and like they've already thought 3 steps ahead before you even ask a question. Now, for our air risings, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Air risings are social, witty, and curious, often buzzing with ideas and ready to connect. Their vibe is breezy and light. They are people who bring an inviting energy. They're easy to talk with, even if you just met them. Their first impressions are friendly, clever, and approachable, and they carry an energy that says, let's exchange ideas. For air risings, think of a person who starts conversations in line at a coffee shop or charms everyone at a party with their stories. Lastly, our water risings, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Water risings are intuitive, magnetic, and emotionally present, often giving a mysterious and soulful energy. They tend to feel the room before speaking, but people sense their depth right away. Their first impressions are compassionate, empathetic, and sometimes a little enigmatic. For water signs, think of a person you've just met, but you've immediately opened up to because they seem to just get you. So, stargazers, here's your reflection for this part. Does your rising element match the kind of first impression you think you give off? Or do you notice that people see you in a way you didn't expect? Don't forget, aspects to your risings can totally shift how the energy plays out. Jot this down in your journals and start noticing the patterns. To wrap this segment up, think of it this way. Fire risings enter a room like a spark. They are instant, bright, and impossible to ignore. Earth risings show up like a mountain. They're steady, grounded, and dependable. Air risings, they breeze in like the wind. They're light, they're engaging, and full of movement. And water risings flow like a wave, are emotional, magnetic, and they're deeply felt. With that, Heather is going to go into some quick highlights on each of the rising signs. So, Heather, do you want to take us away?
Hell yeah. All right, now that we've broken down the rising by elements, let's zoom in on each of the 12 rising signs. Think of this as a speed date with your ascendant. Short, sweet, and to the point. Remember, these are the vibes people pick up on before they even get to know your sun or moon. So let's run through this. First up, we have Aries rising. Your first impression is bold, energetic, and direct. People see you as confident, a go-getter, and always ready to take the lead. You often walk into a room like you're on a mission. For our Taurus risings, your first impression is grounded, calm, and sensual. You radiate comfort and stability, and people feel safe around you. You often give off a reliable friend or steady rock vibe. Now, Gemini rising. Your first impression is chatty, curious, and playful. People notice your youthful, talkative, energetic energy right away. You come across as one who always has a story or idea to share. Moving on to Cancer rising. Your first impression is nurturing, empathetic, and protective. People sense your caring and intuitive aura before you say anything. You give off a warm, safe to open up to presence. And for our Leo rising, your first impression is charismatic, radiant, and theatrical. You shine bright and love being seen, even if subtly. People think, wow, this person has star power. Now, for our Virgo rising, your first impression is polished, thoughtful, and composed. You often appear organized, intelligent, and observant. People sense your attention to detail and grounded approach. Now for our Libra rising. Your first impression is charming, graceful, and social. You come across as approachable, balanced, and aesthetically pleasing. People are drawn to your harmony-seeking energy. Up next is Scorpio rising. Your first impression is intense, magnetic, and mysterious. People can feel your depth the moment they meet you. You may seem private at first, but your aura is definitely unforgettable. And for our Sagittarius rising, your first impression is adventurous, optimistic, and free-spirited. People see you as an open, fun, and full of wanderlust. Your energy feels like a road trip invitation. Up next is Capricorn rising. Your first impression is responsible, composed, and ambitious. You definitely give off CEO or future boss vibes, even in casual moments. People often see you as mature and dependable. Now for Aquarius rising. Your first impression is unique, quirky, and future-focused. You come across as original and maybe even a little unpredictable. People see you as someone marching to the beat of their own drum. And lastly, we have our Pisces rising. Your first impression is dreamy, compassionate, and mystical. People feel softness and empathy in your presence. You often radiate an artistic, imaginative, or otherworldly aura. So remember, stargazers, your rising sign is that front door of your cosmic mansion. It's the energy people see first before flipping through the other pages. And while the rising alone doesn't tell your whole story, it definitely sets the stage. So the next time someone describes you in a way that maybe surprises you, check your ascendant. Chances are they're picking up on your rising vibe.
Yep, and that is some facts.
Heck yeah.
So now that we've gone through the rising signs and elements, let's get a little personal. Heather and I always love sharing how these placements show up in our own charts because, let's be real, it's one thing to read about it and another thing to live it. For our avid listeners, you may remember that our rising signs, as we revealed them and spoke a little bit about them in past episodes, but we are excited to talk more about them here. Heather, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm a Virgo rising, and honestly, I feel it every single day for sure. It is, my Virgo rising gives me an organized and grounded vibe, and for anyone that knows me, this is especially in my work environment. Oh my gosh. And we spoke about that in past episodes.
Yes.
How I've had coworkers tell me that's what keeps me in my job.
Oh my goodness, yes, that nice balance.
Yes. And honestly, oh my gosh, color coordinated list, double checking details, and making sure things run smoothly behind the scenes all are my epitome of my Virgo rising. This is crazy because people often assume I've got it together before they know anything else about me, which, yes, that is Virgo rising, but it's wild because with my Sagittarius sun, I also had that fiery, adventurous side. So it's like definitely a checks and balances.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Because I am, oh man, all over the place. It's like that cosmic editor in a way, which I think is like the editor with that Virgo vibes, balancing my Sagittarius fire with structure.
Whoa. What a combo.
Hell yeah, because without that, no, I would seriously be all over the place without a plan, chasing that next adventure. Oh my gosh. And trip planning.
Yes.
Trip planning. I need to have my adventure, but I will spend hours
perfecting it.
Perfecting it. Oh my God. It drives my husband crazy, but it always comes out awesome.
Facts.
Oh my God. But Sophie, ready to share yours?
Oh, yeah. And then there's me. I am a Leo rising, which amplifies the Leo sun and moon. I'm basically triple Leo energy walking into a room. People always tell me my presence is warm, charismatic, and noticeable, like I'm radiating sunshine. That's the Leo rising at work. It's the radiant entrance that's the magnetic pull, the vibe that says, I'm here. But it's not just about the spotlight energy. It's also about leading with the heart and making people feel seen. That's my favorite thing, honestly. And honestly, I think that's why I love connecting with you stargazers through this podcast so much.
Yo, I love that. It reminded me of Shine Bright Like a Diamond.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I love our rising signs, so I think I love it. But
it's like us.
Yeah.
I know it's like so silly, where it's like, what do you mean? I mean, yeah, it's us, but it's like when you actually get to know us, you'll be like, whoa. That is them. Actually, the astrology was astrologing. Oh, shit. I almost knocked down my mic with my passion.
Yes.
But honestly, it comes through.
I definitely feel that. And
Yeah.
this is actually a little fun thing for our stargazers because we have a fun little challenge for you. So, like me and Sophie just expressed, do you feel like Sophie's Leo rising or my Virgo rising comes through when you listen to us?
Right. Do you notice Heather's grounded, detail-oriented Virgo energy bouncing my fiery Leo glow?
Ooh, or maybe you pick up on the parts we don't realize are showing. Let us know by reaching out to us on our socials at the Stellar Soulcast, or if you're listening on YouTube, drop a comment below. Tell us your thoughts. But in your astro journals, be sure to jot down how you believe your rising sign shows up in your daily life.
We love sharing our placements with you because it shows how astrology isn't just abstract, but rather is living, breathing, and unfolding every day in who we are.
And don't forget your rising sign is such a huge part of that. It's the lens you move through the world with, and sometimes other people will see it before you even do.
All right, stargazers, before we wrap up, it's time for your soul homework. And this week, we're pulling together all the little reflections we've shared throughout this episode into a cosmic journaling practice. So grab those astro journals and let's get into it. First, I want you guys to start by thinking about the very first thing people usually say about you. Do they describe you as bold, quiet, magnetic, nurturing, or something else? Compare that to your rising sign. Does it match, or does your rising seem to give off a different vibe than what you feel inside? And maybe your rising doesn't work alone. Oh, sorry. And remember, your rising doesn't work alone. The aspect it makes to other planets can totally shift how it shows up. Write down those alignments or gaps because they can be eye-opening. Next, I want you guys to find your rising sign's ruling planet, your chart ruler, and trace where it lives in your chart. Which house, which sign, what aspects it's making. Draw all of it down because seeing your chart ruler clearly is like understanding your GPS. It shows you where your rising energy is, steering the whole ship of your chart towards. Now, reflect on your rising element, fire, earth, air, or water. Does that element match the first impression you think you give off, or do you notice people see you differently than you expected? Write down real life examples where your element comes through and where it feels like it doesn't. And finally, take inspiration from us. Heather shared how her Virgo rising balances her Sag Sun, fire, and I shared how my Leo rising amplifies my triple Leo glow. So here's your challenge. Write down how your rising shows up in your daily life. Is it your style? Is it your presence? Or how you start new experiences? And hey, we'd love to know what you think too. Do you notice how there's a Virgo rising coming through when she's grounding our episodes? And do you feel my Leo rising when I bring the big fiery energy to the mic? So your soul homework this week is to weave all these reflections together. Your rising, your chart ruler, your elements, and impressions that you get. Not only will you deepen your understanding of your ascendant, but you'll also start to see how it really lives and breathes in your everyday life. And we cannot wait to hear what you discover, stargazers. Please share it with us.
Yes, we can't wait. But it's that time, Sophie.
It's that time again.
Oh, all right, stargazers, it's time to wrap this episode up. We decoded the Ascendant, your chart's cosmic front door, your first impression, and the vibe you radiate when you walk into the room. We explored its history through ancient civilizations, looked at the elements and each rising sign and how that shapes your aura. And we even dove into your chart rulers, the planetary bosses guiding your rising energy. Now, next time we're climbing all the way up to the top of the chart into the midhaven, or MC for short. This is your cosmic rooftop spotlight, your calling, your career, and the legacy you're here to share to the world. If your rising is the door, then you're midheaven, or MC for short. This is your cosmic rooftop spotlight, your calling, your career, and the legacy you're here to share with the world. But before we say our stellar au revoir, don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss a cosmic drop. Follow us on all our socials at the Stellar Soulcast for your daily astro inspo and updates. Share with us your rising sign because we're excited to know how you are perceived through that front door. Mm-hmm. And with that, we want to remind you all to keep reaching for the stars and trusting the vibes. Until next time, stargazers!